He shoved her so hard. She fell over a coffee table and ended up with a bruise the size of a grapefruit. That was the moment I knew he wasn't just a bad boyfriend. He was dangerous. And while I'm not a fighter, I had access to something he didn't. A computer. And a plan if you've ever felt powerless watching someone you care about get hurt and wish you could make it right. This story's for you. Hit that like button, subscribe, and buckle up, because this is a tale of quiet rage, digital sabotage, and justice served cold. Let me take you back. It was the early 2000s, when the internet still felt like a new frontier and no one really understood just how much power you could wield with the right access. I was in junior college then, working a part-time job in the school's administration office while attending classes. It was a kind of gig where you scan IDs, file paperwork, and sometimes, if you're trusted, you get access to the student database. That last part? Turns out, it mattered more than I could have imagined. Around this time, I had just moved in with my girlfriend, Lucy. We weren't rich, but living together helped us save on rent, and honestly, it felt like one of those sweet young adult chapters. Cheap dinners, game nights with friends, staying up late watching terrible movies. You know, the vibe point one night, Lucy told me she was inviting a classmate over, someone named Sarah. I didn't think much of it until I opened the door and realized I already knew her. Sarah and I had gone to high school together. We were never close, but we had that shared small talk familiarity, the kind where you smile across the room and say, "Hey, long time," when you bump into each other at Target. Turns out she was studying in the same field as Lucy. That first game night was a blast. Cards, laughter, snacks we definitely couldn't afford, and that warm feeling of a tight-knit friend group. Sarah fit right in. Soon, she became a regular, dropping by for dinner, movie nights, or to vent about class. But then came Jay. Jay was her boyfriend, and he couldn't have been more different. The first time he came over, the energy shifted. He didn't smile. He didn't talk. He didn't even try to fit in. He'd sit there, arms crossed, jaw tight, and stare at nothing in particular. You know that feeling when someone walks into the room and it suddenly feels colder? That was Jay. At first, we chalked it up to nerves. Maybe he was shy, maybe socially awkward. But the more he came around, thankfully only a couple times, it became clear he didn't want to be there. And worse, he made Sarah shrink. I started noticing it. The way her posture would change around him. How she'd nervously glance at him before laughing too hard at a joke. Or how she'd overcompensate when introducing him, like she had to defend his presence before anyone said anything. It was subtle, but unmistakable. Then, one night, everything cracked wide open. It was late, close to midnight. Lucy's phone rang. Sarah, crying, begging to come over. 15 minutes later, she was at our door, mascara smeared, voice shaking, arms wrapped tightly around herself like she was trying to hold her soul together. She'd had a fight with Jay. Only it wasn't just a fight. Jay had been accusing her of cheating. Not just with one person, but weirdly vague. Like he didn't know whether it was with me, Lucy, or both of us. His paranoia didn't seem to care about logic. He had called her names I won't repeat here. Nasty, demeaning, poisonous things that no one should ever hear from someone who claims to love them. And then it got physical. When she tried to walk past him to leave, he shoved her. Hard. She fell, tripped over the coffee table, and slammed onto the floor. Lucy later told me the bruise covered her lower back and half her hip. Sarah, still tried to rationalize, insisted it was just an accident, that he had never laid hands on her before. But I saw the fear in her eyes, the kind that tells you the dam had broken and wouldn't be easily patched. And I snapped. There's a certain kind of rage that doesn't make you yell or throw things. It's quieter, heavier. It sits in your gut like a hot iron. You clench your fists, but instead of swinging, you start thinking, plotting. I'm not a violent guy. Never been in a fight. Never wanted to. But this was different. Jay needed consequences. And I had access to the one thing that mattered most to him, his education. See, Jay was a foreign student. His visa depended on being enrolled full-time. If he dropped below a certain number of credits, he'd be in violation, risk deportation. That's not just inconvenient. That's life-changing. And guess what I had access to in my job at the admin office? His student file, class schedule, student ID, enrollment status. And right then I made a decision. I waited until the very last day, the final deadline to make any changes to course enrollment. The kind of deadline schools do not bend for. At the administration office, we had these old school phones used specifically for enrollment actions. No one monitored them closely. You called in, entered the ID, and made changes using a keypad and verbal confirmations. Wildly insecure, I logged in using Jay's student ID and started systematically dropping every single one of his classes. Every single one. But I didn't stop there. Oh no, I started adding courses too. Only the ones that had the highest course fees. Ceramics, photography, lab sciences, anything with an extra price tag. It wouldn't keep him enrolled because those classes were already full or incompatible. But they would rack up a debt, a lot of it. And at our school, if you owed fees, you couldn't get transcripts, couldn't register for new classes, couldn't do anything until your balance was paid. So in one night, I made sure Jay was no longer full-time, enrolled in useless classes that cost money, academically stranded. Then I deleted the call record from the log, cleaned up my workspace, and walked out like nothing had happened. I didn't tell anyone, not even Lucy. It had to be clean, untraceable. But a few days later, I got the most delicious update. Sarah still had one class with Jay, English, every Tuesday. But that next class, something was different. There was a new student in the room, standing, no desk available. So the teacher took roll. And when she got to Jay's name, silence. The teacher frowned, looked around. Jay, are you here? He raised his hand. Yeah, I'm right here. She double-checked the roster. You're not on my list. He started arguing, confused, agitated. But the teacher was holding the official enrollment report, and he wasn't on it. Sarah told us that was the last time she ever saw him in that class. A week later, I checked the system again. All the expensive classes were wiped, but he didn't re-enroll in anything else. I don't know if he got kicked out, left voluntarily, or just gave up, but I like to think the fallout was significant. Because when you hurt someone I care about, you don't just walk away clean. Sometimes I wonder if I went too far, if maybe I overstepped. But then I remember the bruise, the fear in Sarah's voice. And I know I didn't. You don't get to hurt people and walk away without consequences. Not when someone's watching. If that story gave you chills or made you smile just a little, hit that like button. And tell us in the comments, what's your favorite revenge story? And don't forget to subscribe for more stories like this every week. Because justice sometimes comes from the most unexpected places.